My next series of videos is going to be on energetic transfers, energy transfers, including Shaktipat, but also a more sort of comprehensive look at what energy transfers means in various ways, from global to more specific. Okay, because it's such an esoteric subject. You know, it's very rare to even know about what energy transfers are, let alone know how they work or meet somebody who can actually do them, right? I've looked on the internet land and I've seen, you know, a video of an Indian guru, and he just sort of explained it by saying, you know, it's all God, you know, I'm just, you know, channeling God and it's God, you know. So, you know, in a sense that's true, but it's also, we can also break it down a little bit more and get a more detailed explanation, what is I'm going to strive to do in these series of videos. So the first thing to understand is that our reality is multi-tiered. So we have our physical plane, our material plane, everything we know and can be measured by science and things like that. And then we have above that our energetic level. So it's a more subtle level of our energy body, a subtle level of our material bodies. And everything has energy. Everything that's physical also has energy. So we're thinking of our auras, and it's on a level of causation, or on a chain of causation. What happens in our energy bodies first will manifest later in our physical bodies. So it's well known, or in healing circles, that you know, if you have a problem or blockage with your chi, later it will may become physical manifest disease. You know, and that's written about in ancient Chinese, you know, classics. You know, Yellow Emperor's Guide to Internal Medicine is when it's first written about. So then we have above that level of causation, sort of like the boss of the chi, is what we call spirit. And spirit, and it's known as Shen in Chinese, and this is more like linked. This is formless. So whereas our chi, or energy, and our physically manifest reality have some sort of form. You know, chi does have form, even though it's energy. It still has some kind of physical form. You know, according to the Buddhists, something that's formless is spirit. So spirit is more linked to something like thoughts, but not just like our conscious thoughts. Those aren't linked to spirit, Shen energy. It's more like our thoughts. Like, for example, deep in meditation, you might have some sort of, you know, vision type thoughts, or you know when you're communicating with your higher mind, that kind of thoughts. When you use your imagination, that's more closely linked to Shen energy, which is why you know any type of tradition that uses some kind of like power, you know, you call it magic, but it's not. It's really just sort of like using your power of visualization and imagination, and that's sort of connecting with Shen or spirit, and that's putting that chain of causation, allowing that to happen. Okay, so people, ancient people knew that, of course, and you know that's why they bless the spirits of bless the spirits of the sea before they go out on a sea voyage. Bless the spirit of the road before they go out on a long road voyage. You know, and bless the spirits of, you know, the river if they're going fishing or something like that. So they just want, even though it might not be completely effective, but they could still, you know, put in that sort of like spiritual will, the chain of causation, allow that to happen. And since we're all interacting with each other, we're all interacting with each other's spirits, our energies are all interacting all the time. So we're always giving each other transfers of some sort all the time, unconscious, right? So that's sort of your basic unconscious energy transfers. That's how I describe it. And we have the free will, of course, to interact with the energies that we choose that might help us, you know, sort of like evolve and grow, right? So we can choose to read a book and get the you know, the energy from that, the spirit from that book, and that will help us grow and evolve. Or we can choose the friends who are vibrating with higher energy and help us grow and evolve, that type of thing. You know, so but when there's also a kind of person to person, right? So unconscious energy transfer level, because energy is always being sort of like you get the higher level energy people sort of transferring energy to a lower level energy people. It just happens naturally. That's just sort of like a fundamental law. And of course there's people who know that, right? You call them sort of like energy vampires. So those sort of like steal energy people from higher energy people, and they, you know, because they get a kind of like subtle high off of that. And there's also sort of like the opposite side of the coin, because, you know, energy is free and there's just sort of unlimited amount of energy. As long as you just kind of know how to tap into it, you know, you kind of keep that sort of like calm surrenderingness, and energy will just naturally flow through you. So you know that, you know these kind of people who are always sort of like, you know, freely giving of their good mood and energy to others, and it just seems to happen constantly. Those type of people. So that's the other side of the coin. Now, as far as Shaktipat goes, I have to explain something first. Is that there's a fundamental trait of the universe, and the universe wants us to evolve. That, you know, you've heard of the evolving universe, right? So it wants its beings, its parts to evolve as well, right? So everything's evolving, and it also wants us to evolve, you know, humans to evolve, and constituent parts to evolve, that we can see the universe as it sees itself, you know. So this is called the enlightenment type of evolution, the evolution of mind consciousness. So in order to start that process off, often we can choose the path of Kundalini. And the Kundalini, basically, I'm going to sort of define it now as sort of opening the central channel, and that's sort of like your first sort of signpost, your first sort of goal as you set off on this path of evolution. So it can be helped by Shaktipat, which is essentially just sort of transferring a large amount of energy, a certain type of energy, to a person. And so there's different types of Shaktipats. There's sort of like unconscious type Shaktipats, which essentially, you know, I knew this guy in France, for example, this old guy, and he said he was like awakened in some sense. He wasn't fully enlightened, but he was awakened in some sense. So he had a lot of excess energy, you know, and so he was dancing with this woman. He was telling me this story, and the woman started going into a kind of like ecstatic type shaking, you know, and it was just kind of indicative of an energy transfer, right? So that it was sort of like an unconscious thing by people who are sort of relatively more awake and can sort of transfer that Shaktipat energy into other people, okay? So then there's sort of people who just sort of like, have you heard of like this woman who goes around the world hugging people, and those hugs can really help enliven a person's awakening. And then there's sort of like more deliberate type, right? So if a person kind of understands how to tap into this energy source, this universal energy source, call it Shakti, okay? Then we can just sort of like use yourself as a channel and channel the energy by your intent, and channel it into another person. So that's all that's really happening, right? So it can be, you know, time and place sometimes is not important. You know, you can still get an energy transfer by distance, by, you know, even by a recording, you know. So this is what's happening in my videos. But there are people who do more kind of complex style Shaktipat. So some of the more, like, you know, some of the schools, for example, of the Hindu tradition, you'll see a Shaktipat where the guru is sort of directing energy, and he's right next to the person. You know, he's directing energy straight into certain energy centers of another person's body, you know, maybe more than one, and they're directing different types of strengths of energy into various places, where he's being sort of taught a method of Shaktipat. And so that there's also sort of like other ways, not Shaktipat, but other ways in order to enliven the energies of the central channel. So not just Kundalini, what we know as Kundalini awakening, but there's also different ways of opening the central channel. And you'll find those in various Chinese Qigong or Tao schools, or just different sects and schools in cultivation science. So yeah, that's lesson 1 or video 1 of transfers.